everyone, my name is Richie and welcome back to another video. Today you join me on a different sort of video where we're going to be making some predictions and starting some speculation about the upcoming Just Trains route. So in the April roadmap it was announced that Just Trains are going to be making another UK route. So I've been thinking about it for a couple of weeks. People have been asking in my streams, what do you think they're going to make and this and that. And well, I thought I'm going to tell you what my prediction is, and I'm also going to give some honourable mentions at the end. But I think I've got an idea of what they could do. So I'm going to roll with it, and I'm going to give you some information on the route, when they could set it, what rolling stock they could include, all that sort of stuff. So as you can tell from the thumbnail there, you can just make out a pacer, but where is the pacer? Let's find out. So, what route do I think we could get from Just Trains? Which I don't think it's going to come out for like another 4 to 6 months at least. It's probably really early stages. But the route I think we could get is, drumroll please, the Hope Valley line. So yes, I'm predicting the Hope Valley line from Manchester Piccadilly to Sheffield via Stockport and Marple. I've got some bits of information in this video, in this little PowerPoint, just to sort of talk about the route and what we could expect to see if we do end up getting this route, which I would like to see. I think it would be a really nice route. So yeah, here's a little overview of what I think we could see if we ended up getting Hope Valley from Just Trains. The route would be between Manchester Piccadilly and Sheffield. It would go via Stockport and Marple, as you can see on this map here. It goes down to Stockport, and then we've also got a bit of the Glossop line up here, which we've already got in game, so they just have to add on to the Glossop line. It's a 55-mile long route. I've got that from the store page because, well, funnily enough, Just Trains also made this for Train Sim Classics, so it's kind of a reason why I'm pointing towards this route prediction. It's got 28 stations, and I think the route could be set in the 2010s, so it wouldn't quite be modern day, and I think it'll be around about 2015, 2016, prior to the introduction of the 195s. I did originally think that it could be set in like 2019 as the 195s came into service, and it still possibly could happen, because there was obviously the time when the Pacers were brought back in during COVID, and then we'd have 156s and the 195s running on there. But I think we're going to have some relatively modern diesel running with the Class 142, and I think the new Loco we're getting with this pack would be the Class 156, which would be a wonderful little Loco to drive. So a little bit of route information about the Hope Valley line. It's got a couple of branches, so obviously the last route that Just Trains did, it was Blackpool branches. It had branches here and there and everywhere, and I think they'll go with the same sort of theme. People like like networks. They don't like linear routes anymore. And you look at things like Blackpool branches, the recently released Long Island Railroad, Midland Main Line. They've all got different. They're not one end to another. They are one end to another and another way to another way. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like this would fit Just Trains' criteria very well. The route is about 55 miles, so it'd be 42 miles from Manchester to Stockport up to Sheffield, and then you've got that other bit of running via the Glossop line and then down towards New Mill Central, which is about 13 miles. So I think it's a bit closer to like 56 miles. But there's a fair bit of mileage on this route. The Hope Valley line crosses the Peak District National Park, which is a beautiful part of the country. If you've ever been to the Peak District, you've probably got some pretty pictures. There's some quite famous tunnels on this route. You've got the Disley Tunnel, the Calburn Tunnel, and the Totley Tunnel. I think it's the Calburn Tunnel. It's the deepest tunnel in the UK or something like that, which is, a notable point of the route. And there's some lovely viaducts and scenery and all that sort of stuff that we could see if we ended up getting this route. So a little bit about the rolling stock, the Class 142 Pacer and the Class 156 Super Sprinter. There's a picture of the 142. So this would be in the old Northern livery, and the same for the 156 as well. So this would be just before they changed all the liveries to what the modern Northern one is now. So yeah, one thing to note as well is that I don't know, as much as I would like to see the old Northern livery, I don't know how it would work from a licensing point of view, because the only reason Northern have allowed their licensing to be used in the Glossop line is because it's now DFT owned. So essentially the logos and whatever fall under government control, which is a bit easier to get licensing for. So I don't know whether they'd be able to get the old livery and the old logo and stuff, but it'd be really cool to see. And of course the 156 in the same livery, which would be really nice to see as well. And just look at that wonderful, wonderful unit. So yeah, a little bit of information about the rolling stock. So yeah, the Class 142 could be reused from Blackpool branches. Obviously, work to have the DRA in it and then reliveried and whatever else. It'd be a modern version of the Pacer, so instead of it looking pretty brand new as it does in Blackpool branches, it could be have a bit more weathery and a bit more dense and whatever else. So yeah. And of course, we know that the Pacer is a 2-car DMU. The Class 156 would be the new Loco, which is part of the Sprinter family. We've already got the 150 and the 158 as part of the Sprinter family in the game. So it'd be very nice to have another addition to that family. Which would mean, I think, we'd only have the 153 and the 155 left to go. On the 159 as well, but that's technically a 158, isn't it? So then we would almost have the whole Sprinter family. And of course, the 156 is another 2-car DMU. And this is the thing I think it would become interesting in the timetable because, the 142s and the 156s would sub in for each other. And I think in a lot of cases you would see 142s and 156s coupled together. So that would be an interesting point of gameplay. Also, we could maybe see a reduced timetable for the 142 as they're going out of service, or it could just work as a substitution sort of thing. So it'd be quite interesting from a timetable point of view. And on the topic of the timetable, I did a little bit of research to see what potentially we could get, and there's a lot of service patterns and whatever else, and here they are. The service patterns would be Manchester to Sheffield, which would be a northern operated service. We'd also get Manchester to Guybridge and Manchester to New Mill Central, both having a train per hour each. And we'd see 2 trains per hour between Manchester and Rosehill Marple. We'd also get a train per hour between Sheffield and Manchester operated by East Midlands Trains. And we'd also see Sheffield to Manchester operated by TPE. Now obviously out of all them there, we don't have Transpennine Express in the game. I will come on to that though. We'd also see some West Coast mainline services between Manchester and Stockport, so depending on when this is released, if it's after the summer release and we get the West Coast mainline, we could have additional AI and playable services there. And I also read into the freight traffic that it would be operated by Class 20s, which would be quite interesting to see as well. So yeah, we'd have many service types. In the core, we'd have upwards of 3 trains per hour between Manchester and Sheffield. In the core Manchester network, we could have upwards of 8 trains per hour. We'd have playable services between Manchester and Stockport. And of course, there'd be freight, and Just Trains would definitely put a rail tour in, maybe a couple. So I think a total service count, if we got this route, would be around 250 to 300. And onto the layers we could see on this route, bearing in mind that this is, it's 6 months away, and there's some routes that could come out that could layer into this route. But as of the 5th of May, this is what we could see layered into this route. We'd have the Class 158 from East Midlands Trains, which would do that 1 train per hour between Sheffield and Manchester. We'd get playable Class 323 services between Manchester and Stockport, and I think Hazel Grove as well, which I believe would run Manchester Airport services and crew services as well. We'd have the Class 20 for freight, as I mentioned, and we'd definitely have the Class 66 as well, wouldn't we? Other playable services could include steam rail tours, stuff like that. Just Trains are quite good with their timetables, so we could see plenty of stuff layered in. And as for AI, we'd see the Class 43 at Sheffield because it's part of the Midland Main Line, so we would definitely see quite a nice selection of AI. There we go, there's a Northern Class 323, which I think would be in its old livery as well. I don't know, it might be just in the modern Northern livery, we'll see. And there we go, the East Midlands Trains 158 as well. And here's a freight service running along the Hope Valley line. Obviously wouldn't be operated by a Freightliner 66, it'd be the EWS one. Now, a bit similar to my expectations video where I say we could get a potential DLC. Obviously this is a prediction, so if this route was to come out, would there be a potential for a Loco DLC? And the potential Loco DLC I think we could see if we did get the Hope Valley line, which brings in to what I said earlier, would be the Class 185. So yes, the Transpennine Express 185, which is a staple amongst the north of England. I think it'd be really cool to have this as a DLC, because it could open the door for a lot more East Coast Mainline North with the 185s layered in, and you can have it could open the door to a modern Northern Transpennine in the future. Obviously, from a licensing standpoint, TPE has recently come under government control, similar to Northern, so the licensing is kind of a given. And it would also fill in that extra train per hour between Sheffield and Manchester. So yeah, I think we could definitely see a 185 if they brought out the Hope Valley line. little bit of information on the route features, sort of the scenic parts and whatever else. Obviously, we've got key stations in Manchester Piccadilly, which we already have in the game. You got Sheffield here, where I think that's a 150 in the background, but you'd have the 156s stopping here, the Pacers, and then you'd also see the Midland Main Line stock as well. And here's Stockport, which has a Pendolino in it. Assuming we get the Pendolinos in the summer release, I reckon we certainly could. And obviously, you've got the old liveried 323 in the background there. And then we've got this wonderful piece of infrastructure, the Marple Aqueduct and Viaduct, which, you know, whenever you watch a trip report on YouTube of this route, you see this. Everyone likes to point this out, and it would be beautiful to see in the game. So yeah, we'd be crossing the Peak District, as I mentioned earlier. We've got the Marple Viaduct and the Aqueduct. And it would be a mix of urban and rural as well. So it'd start off in, you know, Manchester and end in Sheffield, and in the middle, you're literally in the middle of nowhere. So it'd be quite nice. It'd be sort of similar to Northern Transpennine, where you're starting in Leeds, you go through the countryside, and you end up in Manchester. So it could be a modern sort of version of that. And of course, we've got the key stations like Manchester Piccadilly, which we already have in the game, Sheffield from the Midland Main Line, and Stockport on the West Coast Main Line. So ultimately, why do I think the Hope Valley? As I mentioned before, the Hope Valley is a route that Just Train's made for Train Sim Classic, and we often see routes that are made in Train Sim Classic come over to Train Sim World. It follows the sort of branches theme that Just Trains like to do. You see that across a lot of their Train Sim Classic routes as well. They've got a lot of branches. They don't like linear routes, so you know it kind of fits that theme, and they've already done it, so they've already got the referencing for it. It reuses the Class 142, which, you know, they put a lot of time into that with the suspension and whatever else, so they might as well reuse it and, you know, relivery it and whatever else. It's another northern route, and yes please, I would absolutely love seeing the north of England being represented in the game. I have looked at the forums, and it's a highly requested route. As much as a lot of people will say, no, they'd much rather see a different Just Trains route, it is a highly requested route. A lot of people would love to see this. It's very scenic, lots of points of interest, tunnels, whatever else, so it'd be very good from a scenic point of view. It's got a lot of gameplay opportunities. Like I say, you can have 142s and 156s coupled up. You've got layers that could be brought into it, you know, and it reuses sort of Manchester Piccadilly and whatever else. And, you know, there's a lot of opportunities for new sorts of gameplay there. And of course, the Class 156 is everywhere across the north of England. So if they made any other future northern routes, i.e. the Harrogate line, the Tyne Valley line, you know, they could use the 156 in future. And as I said at the start, there's some honourable mentions for predictions I think we could see. Obviously, I've kind of gone to town on Hope Valley, but a couple of honourable mentions that we could also see that if you want to, I might make full videos on them as well. And those are the Tyne Valley line, which would be Newcastle to Carlisle, which would also have the 142 and the 156. And again, it'd be another diesel line. The reason I thought Tyne Valley line, and I only thought of this the other day because I was in someone's live stream and they were going through the Pacer PIS in the game, and it has Newcastle and Carlisle in the PIS. So I thought, they've got all the Northern Transpennine in, they've got Tees Valley, and they've got the West Cornwall Local PIS. Funnily enough, they've got Newcastle and Carlisle. Tyne Valley. So it's just mainly because there's a sort of a hint towards it. But like that route's quite linear. Which I wouldn't be disappointed if we got that, but it just doesn't seem to follow the path that Just Trains are going on with their Train Sim World releases. And another one a lot of people want to see as well is the Metropolitan line, which would be Aldgate to Amersham and Uxbridge. This is obviously another Just Trains route on Train Sim Classic, and a lot of people, as soon as they announced that they were doing a new route, everyone jumped onto this sort of bandwagon. So I personally don't think we will see this because it's quite a challenge. There's a lot of stations on it, and there's a lot of mileage. So I don't think they'd do a Metropolitan line. I feel like what fits within their scope, it's either this or the Tyne Valley. And on to my closing thoughts, what route do you think we could see from Just Trains? Do you think we could also see the Metropolitan line? Maybe the Hope Valley line, you know? Have you got any other ideas? Is there anything that you want them to do? Let me know in the comments. I personally think that all signs are pointing towards this route. Whether we get it is another question, but I would certainly like to see it. And as we've just seen in this video, there is a lot to it as well, so it wouldn't be a boring route. It'd be quite interesting. But yeah, that's my prediction for the next Just Trains TSW route. And if it is this route, I'd be very excited for it. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please smash that like button and subscribe if you're new. I'd massively appreciate it. Let me know what you think we could see next, and I'll hopefully see you all in the next video. Bye bye.